Majority Report with Sam Seder. It's time to look in the mirror, America. Do you like what you see?
I keep referring to Obama as the magic Negro.
Do you like what you see now?
Well, suck on this.
It's just a mirror, America.
Shared sacrifice by everybody.
What could it do to you except reflect your image?
I did nothing wrong at the Minneapolis airport.
The Majority Report.
Far more credible to me than PBS and Frontline.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It's Tuesday, September 11th, 2018. My name is Michael Brooks, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We're broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, on the screen, please, Darnell Moore, author of No Ashes in the Fire, Coming of Age, Black and Free in America. This is a pre-record that Sam did about a week ago. Very good interview. Also, we will be taking you into the fun half. It's, of course, the 17-year anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attacks on Manhattan, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., the precipitating events for a global crime spree that continues. It's also the anniversary of the 1973 CIA-backed coup in Chile. A somber day for many, but not all, and I'll explain that in a second. Jeff Sessions urges immigration judges to show less sympathy in a court system already riddled with inhumanity. The Trump administration wants to make it easier to release methane into the air, and doctors give no reason for a third of opioid prescriptions, a new study finds. CNN shows that Donald Trump's approval ratings are in free fall. He's down to 36%, which in political reality is good news for us. In overall world reality, the fact that 36% of Americans approve of this guy is disturbing in and of itself. Women, minorities, and first-time candidates drive Democratic House hopes, and white men are the minority of Democratic nominees. Ahead of the primary day, the Cuomo administration has offered sweeteners to get a new bridge opened after a major embarrassment that occurred just days ago. Maybe the broader team around Cuomo and the state Democratic Party, good at smearing Cynthia Nixon, not so good at bridge safety. Republicans have become silent on deficit reduction as Mitt Romney pops back up into the public discourse with a totally pointless, irrelevant call for probably just going to be more austerity. There's going to be, it looks like, a second meeting with Trump and the leader of North Korea, and Hurricane Florence is headed to the Carolinas. All that and more on today's Majority Report. The crew is here. Jamie Peck is in the co-commander seat.
Hello.
Matt and Brendan are on the ones and twos. And it's the anniversary of September 11th. I think particularly in New York, it's something that it's real for the country. But I mean, this is real in the way that if you walk by a firehouse in Brooklyn, more likely than not, you'll see a shrine to a first responder that died going in to rescue people. I have a memory of it being in Massachusetts and hearing it on the news in the morning, and at first sort of being like, that's weird. And then, it really quickly becoming obvious that it was a terrorist attack. Do you guys have memories of this?
Yeah, I was in a meeting of the recycling club, actually, when I found out the news. And West Hartford, Connecticut in high school. And then everyone went to the cafeteria and just started watching the news. And then the second plane hit, and it was obviously really fucked up and crazy.
Where were you guys?
I was in art class. I was doing like ceramics. I was making a car.
That's cool
thing, and we put it on in the TVs in the corner of the room. And I think football practice might have been canceled. I'm not sure, but then the one thing I do remember is cars lined up around the gas stations.
Cars lined up around the gas stations.
Yeah,
People
panic buying gasoline.
thought the gasoline was going to run out.
Yeah.
Brendan.
I think we had like morning recess or something like that. And I grew up in the suburbs of New Jersey, and a lot of people's fathers and mothers worked in downtown Manhattan, and they sent us all home. And I remember like the memorials and things thereafter being like particularly like kind of chilling. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, it was for this region, it's something that's never going to go away.
No, it's a real thing. And I think that, you know, even though obviously it was used to advance just a catastrophic global agenda, I've been back in the sort of research mode for an illicit history of the war on terrorism for TMBS. And I mean, everything wrong that could have come out of that event did, but it still obviously was a horrific, terrifying, awful, and just savage event. And those of us who might be critics and dissenters of America's response in terms of foreign policy still are somber about it. There's a guy who seems to have a little bit of a different approach to this, and maybe he's just trying to pep us up. Here is Donald Trump. This is a photo of him in Pennsylvania. He's with arriving in Jonestown. This is, of course, close by where Flight 93 crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The passengers took over that plane, as far as I understand, and actually they basically tried to commandeer it, and it crashed, and they prevented another attack. And here's Trump. He's in mode. Yeah,
the one that matters is me. I'm the only one that matters.
Helicopters. The Secret Service guys are like, what the fuck is the matter with this guy? Melania's like, don't even ask. I'm not even going to explain, Ski.
I'm not here. She's just been pretending she's been invisible for the last 6 months.
I'm not here. My invisibility cloak. I'm wearing my invisibility panties. I'm not here. And lest you think Donald Trump was being a little cavalier and maybe, maybe the fake press caught him in like a weird moment, and really what he was doing was actually making a really somber gesture. Here's his commemoration tweet that dropped at 7:58 a.m. Eastern Standard Time this morning. 17 years since September 11th. And that's it.
Exclamation point.
That is the quote. I'm going to have to do, could you imagine 8 years since September 11th? Exclamation point. Here I'm in Shakespeare. What's up, baby? Jonestown. What's the matter, Michelle? Why you look so somber? Come on, woman. Come on, baby girl.
Fired up, ready to go.
He puts on some, he's like, well, can't we play some Mal Green in the parking lot? I want to dance.
Going to Shanksville, baby.
Going to Shanksville. Good job, Devils. You took one of them down, but the rest hit. Allahu Akbar. All right, let's go get this speech on. Okay. And then, of course, after these very weird, discordant memories, Trump went and did the other thing that he's great at besides being an absolute narcissistic jackass, which is fear-mongering and smearing Muslims.
A piece of America's heart is buried on these grounds, but in its place has grown a new resolve to live our lives with the same grace and courage as the heroes of Flight 93. This field is now a monument to American defiance. This memorial is now a message to the world. America will never, ever submit to tyranny. Since September 11th, nearly 5.5 million young Americans have enlisted in the United States Armed Forces. Nearly 7,000 service members have died facing down the menace of radical Islamic terrorism.
So, first of all, I thought the grace comment was always funny, coming from Trump. I don't know whether or not we'll submit to tyranny, but the threat of tyranny does not come from Yemen or Pakistan. It comes from
I don't know. Have you seen their pickup trucks?
Yeah, I've seen those pickup trucks, and as scary as they are, it comes from your bloated self, Mr. President.
It's also weird just to, like, they need to fill up the content of that speech with something. So you name the amount of soldiers who have enlisted.
You name the amount of soldiers that have enlisted.
And not any relevance to, like, what good that's done us. Or, like, the safety of the world in general and, like, people's living standards abroad. Like,
no, it's a numbers game. Everything's a numbers game.
Yep, it's like when that columnist whose name escapes me currently, the best of all possible worlds guy.
Steven Pinker.
Probably listed the number of troops we have and the size of our army as one reason
Mike Allen,
why
Axios.
why actually things
Allen.
are only getting better. And I was like, that's an interesting interpretation of what's better. Also, Spencer Rapone made this point when he was on our show, which is that this sort of incredible amount of pageantry around the troops and sort of blind jingoistic support for American foreign policy and conflating that with supporting the troops. He says that that's really kind of a recent since 9/11 type of thing, which I'm sure it existed in some form before that. But yeah, that hadn't occurred to me.
it was, I think it may be because it was more democratic anyway, right? Like now it's, everybody knew somebody because you had the draft maybe. Like the draft might have had something to do with that sort of thing. I'm not sure. Like you have to force
really
it a bit
got
more.
amped up after September 11th. There was a massive amount of sort of popular militarism after September 11th.
And in popular culture especially.
It's made sporting events so much better.
Yeah, right. It's made sporting events so much better. Today's show is brought to you by the Sierra Club. If you like the stories you hear on our show, we think you'll like the Sierra Club's new storytelling podcast, The Land I Trust. Season 2 of The Land I Trust is out now, bringing you storytellers from across the western U.S. who share their experiences in harvesting, protecting, and living with the 4 natural elements: water, fire, wind, and air. The series has 14 tales of individuals across the western part of the country as they share their tales of climate change, clean energy, and everything in between. Each year, the Sierra Club visits a different region of the country for a new set of stories. Season 1, Stories from the American South, talk to musicians, families, farmers, and climate refugees, helping to move the South from coal ash pollution to a brighter, cleaner future. You can listen to The Land I Trust at beyondcoal.org/stories. That's beyondcoal.org/stories, or on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check out Season 2 of The Land I Trust today. We will be right back. We're going to have Sam's interview with Darnell Moore. That'll be about 35 minutes or so. And then the crew will be back to take you into the fun half.
We are back on the Majority Report on the phone. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program author Darnell Moore on his memoir, No Ashes in the Fire, Black and Free in America. Welcome to the program, Darnell.
Thanks for having me.
You know, and I got to say, I should start off. We don't have we don't interview many folks who have memoirs, but in many respects, there is a real, I think, political element to your book, and one that is also, I think, founded in a certain sort of individual sense of freedom. I mean, let's start with that. When you talk about being black and free in America, this is let's talk about being free first, and then
Sure.
we'll work our way back.
Yeah, and first I'll say, too, that it is a memoir, but it is both an account of like a personal narrative, but it's also, I try to write out a type of social history, too, so that one can understand the life world and through which I came, and also a lot of what I call in the book the unseen hands at work shaping not only my life but my community, which absolutely had everything to do with public policy and a history of place and space and everything else. But with regards to freedom, I want to be clear that does not negate our tries to give I talk about freedom as existential freedom, as a type of ability to see oneself fully, to come to an understanding of oneself as a black queer person in the U.S. In this particular context, and to love that self, to love one's full self. But that is also not a way of not attending to the various forces that can limit one's sense of self, one's freedom, one's well-being. So doesn't mean that racism is still not operative. It doesn't mean that antagonism because of sexual identity or gender expression is still not limiting the freedom and lives of some. It doesn't mean that class stratification does not always sometimes keep people from succeeding and this economic disenfranchisement. What I was getting at there is what it means to not love oneself because of the various messages that I've been taught about blackness, about queerness, and to finally get to a point where I can look in the mirror and to love the reflection staring back.
And we should say you grew up, and we'll talk more about this, but obviously you grew up in Camden in Philadelphia. But I mean, just staying on that notion of that freedom being, a sort of unshackling, I guess, the human bondage on some level that comes with being black, being queer, and growing up in the context in which you did. What is? I mean, what does that position you? Does it position you to be able to come to accept yourself and love yourself in a broader society where being black, you are constantly bombarded with messages to not love yourself, and being queer in both the black community and the wider community, same message. And what does it do for you once? I mean, and obviously it implicates you, personally. But that level of freedom, can you address these broader societal issues that you talk about in a different way?
Absolutely. So, the one thing I want to say is the stories that I write about in the book aren't exceptional in that they are mine. I'm talking from my perspective and those of some of the people around me. But it's a truth that, that there are segments of people, whether they be black or LGBT or economically disenfranchised, who daily survive through racism and homophobia or trans antagonism and so much else. That said, part of what I was trying to do in the book is to make a point about how individual strength, or what I talk about in the book, I talk about queerness as magic and individual triumph and freedom. While that is the sort of the type of stories we love to hear, like the ones that lift up an exceptional character who somehow, despite one's troubles, made it through and made it successful, so that the answer is go out and follow the path that this person did and pull yourself up by the bootstraps, because you can do it too, right? I was really interested in exposing how, even with strength and brilliance and magic and all that I talk about, if the conditions through which one comes to be And I'm talking material conditions, public policies, the political forces, neighborhood blight, the type of real estate moves that had redline communities. If those types of things aren't attended to, then I don't care how strong a person can be individually. The reality that they can succeed or make real in their dreams and actualize their goals is that much harder. And that's what the book is really about. My message was, yes, some of us survive the fires that come metaphorically there, right? But some people don't. So let's figure out how any of us implicated in the making of fires in other people's lives and how that could limit individuals' freedom to be not only alive, but to be alive and to flourish.
What do you think? I mean, and you know, I want to get into some of the details of your life, but what do you think? Because you know, this issue, obviously, of material context, fundamentally putting up more roadblocks and some that are insurmountable, and some that I would imagine mix with the individual in different ways, right? That it's not just simply some type of like, we're going to, narrow the bandwidth of people who will succeed here. There's got to be some type of interplay too, where there are moments in one's life and obstacles that one faces in one's life that somehow mix with other experiences in that life that you know make one more lucky, I guess, or have some type of advantage to survive through that type of situation. And what do you think that was in your life?
I mean, I had community and a family who, despite our lack of wealth, was rich in love and care and support. I did not go without a community of care who helped me to navigate life, who pushed me when I had goals, who supported those goals, who would give their last dime. I come from the type of family that would never let one of their own go without a bed or a place to lay their head, without food to eat. That to me is a modeling of a type of collective care that often goes without in our society in the U.S. right now. I mean, that to me is radical love. It means a practice of ensuring that the least of these, especially, that people don't go without. It's a practice of hospitality, of opening the door. And by family, I mean my biological family and also the people in my community and lives, teachers, mentors, folk who were fighting in my community to ensure that I had access to things in school systems that often sometimes lacked that access. So one can't succeed unless they are within a context and within a community where there are people fighting to ensure on an everyday basis that their ability to thrive is that much more easier.
And we should say you grew up in a family of 11, and we'll talk about your father and then the other experiences you had. But I mean, presumably, right? There are kids growing up contemporaneous with you who may have had access in some respects to that same community, right? Or, I mean, how, I mean, because that's no guarantee even then, right?
Right. I mean, there's no guarantee, right? I mean, we all make different choices. We all get exposed to different things. Our life worlds are vastly different. So there is no guarantee. But what we can do is commit to doing our
I'm sorry, Darnell. I'm sorry, we're losing you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's no real guarantee, right? With regards to how any of us are to go about living our lives. But what we should do is to ensure that folk have as much access as possible to the resources and tools that they need. I happen to be an inquisitive child. I was in a family that supported that inquisitiveness, and I also realized that my story, so I also, I came out as gay to my family. they love me, and they always have, and they supported me. There are people, though, who don't have access to family structures that are so open, right? I've worked with young people for a long amount of time who disclose their sexuality to family members, and they got put on the street. So I also want to be clear that this is what I mean by individualism is the optic through which we ought to sort of gauge success. Like, we have to think about the communities through which young people or anybody exist, and access to spaces of care and communities of care that allow them to succeed.
So let's talk about the title, "No Ashes in the Fire," because I mean, it's obviously it's metaphorical, but it also it relates to a specific event that you were subjected to at age 14.
Sure. Yeah. So it is. Thank you for catching that. It's both metaphorical and literal. At 14, I was picked on a lot because of my gender expression. I got called names for acting quote unquote girly or too feminine, and was one day after school was coming from the store, and some neighborhood boys surrounded me and physically assaulted me. And in doing so, one of them took a gallon of gasoline. Actually, it was a gallon of like a milk carton that was filled with gasoline, and emptied that on me and tried to light a match. But somehow the wind, the elements, took the flame out. So it's the title is a reference, a literal reference to that. There was no ashes in the fire because there was no body to sort of be laid bare, no body that was destroyed by what could have been a fire. But it's also a metaphor about what it means to survive, to live Black within the context of a country for whom that has always been on fire with regard to Black people here. And what I mean by that, the fire is a metaphor for the various type of structural forces that try to impede not only Black well-being and progress, but even life. So it is my way of speaking both to a sort of specific incident, but making a statement about what it means to survive despite in the face of oppression and let me be really clear, public policies and laws, actions and trends that attempt to thwart Black people's lives and well-being.
Talk about the implications of when you first became aware that your father was abusing your mom.
So I write in a book about the intimate partner violence that my mom suffered at the hands of my father, and I talk about that as a means of, one, exposing what my mom had to endure as a Black girl she was 16 when I was born, raising a child. So I tried to illuminate that not only was she hit by the fist of her partner, literally, but she was also hit by the fist metaphorically of the state. I mean, she suffered a lot. She made minimum wage. I remember one time she went to the municipal welfare office and literally walked into a glass door. If that wasn't like a striking metaphor, I don't know what else is. In so many ways, her life examples what Black feminists like Kimberly Crenshaw coined. He coined the term intersectionality, which we hear a lot, which is about the interconnected forces that not only define sometimes, but also limits the sort of life capacities and progress in Black girls and women's lives. Her story illuminates that. But with my father, I also wanted to figure out what was the forces that shaped him. He was 15 years old when I was born. And it did not occur to me until I was writing that he was a child who was attempting to raise a child. And all I kept thinking is, who taught him what he knew about fatherhood and manhood and boyhood? And I'm assuming that some of those messages was about him, about real men being strong and head of the home and demonstrating their power through their physical and sexual prowess. And part of it was coming to a point where I could humanize him, not only see him as a monster who did harm, because he did, and we held him accountable for that, but as also in writing his life on paper, it brought me to a more expansive understanding of him as a human being who did wrong things, but also who had been socialized to believe that some of those things were right. I remember talking to my mother and asking how could she forgive him, and she said it's because I don't only see him for the bad things he's done. I remember the good things he did in my life, like feeding her when she was hungry and protecting her when they were kids, and they were kids. Right. So, by the end of the book, it was important for me to wrestle with him. He died. My father passed away at 55 while I was writing the book, and his death also gave me time to think about how, for the most a big part of my life, I had only characterized him as a monster. But writing about him helped me to deal, or at least to paint a broader picture of his humanity, both the beauty he was able to bring about with his hand and as much as the violence. And I think that it was a transcendent moment for me, but it also made me realize that we all have the capacity within us to do both good and bad, and we do. And that, I can't lift him up as the big bad monster and not also evaluate the extent to which I have to look at the monsters in me too.
And you also deal with that notion of I guess toxic masculinity and how it permeates. I mean, how just. I want to talk just a little bit more about that, sort of like in the context of the black community coming out as gay and having at least a positive response from your immediate family. But broadly speaking, I mean the challenge that's involved, like what I mean, you've touched on intersectionality as well, but this is like. It sort of goes beyond what the I mean, I guess from a personal standpoint, what does that like? I mean, do you disaggregate those two things in your
I do.
Yeah,
I do. So it's important for me to say the black community is not more homophobic than any other community. I often say the laws that made sodomy real. That some of those laws weren't overturned until recently, within the last sort of 2 decades. Legislation, these were ratified by state bodies. Okay, we exist in a context of a country that, through its laws, policies, and practices, and also ideas, has propagated antagonism towards LGBT people. That is not at all specific to black people. We exist within a context of where religious institutions and or Christian ideology folk are not within the church influence such laws and influence such ideas. I mean, evangelicals are not just black. We have white evangelicals, Latinx evangelicals, a type of evangelical theology that insists upon homosexuality and transgender experiences as being sinful. This is not germane to black people. The same thing with toxic masculinity. And I always say that America as a country, as a society, has propagated an idea of a masculinity that's preferred. Hence, we have a person in the White House who is a sort of perfect example of what toxic masculinity looks like played out. Right. But the reason why Trump is voted into the White House is because that display of toxic masculinity is as American as apple pie, and people are attracted to that. So that being said, I make those points to say that the problem of antagonism towards LGBT people, masculinity that is a type of violent masculinity that is about, the meaning of women and femfolk and somehow viewing women as property that can be touched, our locker room talk and all these things are problems for the country, whether you're black, white, and whatever. Now, what I will say, though, is that to be black and queer or trans and or economically disenfranchised is to fight against multiple arrows at once, to protect oneself against multiple arrows at once. So I'm not only, the rainbow flag is not just the one element of the fight, right? Like freedom to be queer is not just one element of the fight. At the same time, you may be impacted by racism, and if you're a woman, you may be impacted by sexism, and if you're queer or trans and living on the streets. So this is where the intersectionality comes in. That like even within notions of LGBT progress, if we're not thinking about racism or sexism, then we do ourselves an injustice because we're on multi-pronged issues and they can't be won with single variable tools.
Does just to circle back on that notion that things like toxic masculinity, things like anti-LGBT sentiment is not by any stretch exclusive purview or of the black community, but is there? As you're just talking, and it does get filtered through the broader society, but does the relationship of black people to American society, because of the way that black people have been devalued in our society, when those elements filter through that lens, do they mutate in any way? Is the importance of that toxic masculinity? I guess maybe Donald Trump is like presumably about as far removed from that as possible, and maybe he's a perfect example of that. It's really not that different in any fashion, but it just strikes me as I guess I'm just curious if you have a sense that the importance or the pressure involved in being more masculine, broadly speaking, might have more prominence if you are living in poverty, whether you're black or white, or
yes. I hear what you're saying. So part of it is like thinking about the history of race and racialization and gender in this country. So the one thing is you have to remember when black folk were brought here as enslaved objects who were considered things. We do realize that that black folk were not even considered fully human, but property. Gender is a thing that is, things aren't men or women, things are things, and that's how we were seen in this country. And I think that that's important to note, that when we talk about masculinity and its toxicity, that if we don't talk about it within the context of a history of racialization and dispossession in this country, then we do ourselves a disservice. To your point, there are historians like Evelyn Higginbotham, who's from Harvard, who talked about the politics of respectability as one example. And what she was really talking about in her work and assessment of middle-class black women within black people within a sort of South during the civil rights movement within the church was about how some of them tried to compensate for the dehumanizing view that white racists had of them in the Jim Crow South by overly accommodating for things. So in other words, there was a way in which they would say things like, we have to be respectable, right? We have to, I know they don't think we're fully human or we're worthy of having equitable access under a Jim Crow state, that we don't deserve to be drinking at their water. They're looking at us like monsters. But if we go out here and show them that we're just as smart, that we dress just as fine, that our families are just as quote unquote together, right? Then we can be seen as being on equal player field. And this is what I hear you saying, that sometimes the response to the failure of a full society to welcome and to create equitable space for people is to somehow overperform or overcompensate. What I will say, though, the quick point that folk always say is like, well, of course, you have the black church. That's, this is an example. This is sort of a rationale for homophobia being more present in the quote-unquote black community, or hip-hop as a site toxic masculinity, and therefore, this is seen as evidence that black folks somehow maintain that. But part of what that does is sort of grounded in a type of cultural pathologization. This idea that black people, because they're black, somehow end up, more overly and hyper masculinized and more homophobic than others. The point that I'm trying to make is that if we don't think about the context through which this country thinks about masculinity and manhood and who was considered real men before black folk were considered anything human, and think about the context through which we get these messages and how those messages filter through all of the things you just said, then we do ourselves a disservice.
Right.
But I think you're right in saying that, like, that in a context with which one has to contend with all of these prevailing ideas about what it means to be something like a traditional family, for crying out loud, right? Then you do sometimes try to overcompensate by filling in the blanks for those ideas, if that makes sense. So I am a student of history, and it makes sense to me.
And it's also, it also strikes me as being, this is the one, I guess, attribute of an elevated social hierarchy that you have access to, right? Mm-hmm. At least I'm a man, and so I'm going to go to that well hard because.
Oh yeah. Yep. And I talk, I write about that in the book a bit, right? Like, and how, but part of what I think is the answer is to deviate from that, is to understand that as a process and to figure out what it means to be different. I now say, like, I'm not interested in being a better man or a non-toxic man or a man who's not performing toxic masculinity. I am trying to be a better human being. Right. You know what I mean? Who's freed from all of those boxes, which for many can be cages anyway. And by cages, I mean, these notions of manhood and masculinity that are prison cells for people. And I don't always think does more harm than good sometimes.
Let's talk about you're an activist in the Black Lives Matter movement, and I'm curious as to your perspective on how the movement has had to react to this sort of different era where from when it first emerged.
So the movement for Black Lives, like any movement, it shifts. Movements shift and they contort, and they, if organizers are paying attention, will shift things according to what the needs of the people are and which the movements are representing. So, Movement for Black Lives, which is a contingency of a variety of different organizations across the country, and now really across the world, who are interested not in a racial justice, transformative racial justice that not only just includes the ending of racism, but of so much else, sexism and economic exploitation and much else. There's so much work being done. There's a Movement for Black Lives policy table that includes several dozens of organizations and people who have created policy recommendations and a policy agenda platform that can be utilized, particularly in a moment with a lot of the changing political landscape. There's electoral roundtables and coalitions that are rethinking what candidacies can look like at both the local and regional levels. That's been at work. I mean, the recent work of Stacey Abrams is a perfect example of that. So many people involved in that work are also involved in the Movement for Black Lives. St. Louis is another region, geographical example. Chicago, people have been elected. Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi. A lot of the folks there who are been elected or platforms and that have been created has largely come out of that work. Alicia Garza, who is one of the co-founders of the Black Lives Matter Global Network, along with some colleagues, started the Black Futures Lab, which has created and sparked one of the first efforts of its type, a Black Census that is a tool that is aimed at Black constituents across the country to look at how black people are faring differently based on their geography, age, gender, sexual orientation. So that type of information can be disaggregated. So it isn't just about assuming an assumption about what people's issues are, but looking at and asking specifically about what those issues are so that policies can then be crafted in response to them. So those are just a few examples of the work that continues to be done right now, given change in administration and therefore the social and political landscape.
I mean, talk about though. I mean, but I guess I'm curious as to, and maybe in just a more general sense, right? That how having an administration that is both hostile in terms of practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jeff Sessions has basically said we're going to unwind to the extent that there was any progress in getting police departments around the country to at least be aware and know that there's going to be somebody. There's the potential of like somebody from Washington coming and looking at what's going on here. Jeff Sessions has completely abolished that on one hand. On another hand, Donald Trump has basically said, hey, I'm going to normalize or, provide 30,000-foot cover for you to call the police on a black woman if you think she has a fraudulent coupon. Or, I mean, just like every day we get another video of like, and I don't know if that's a function on some level of more phone cameras, or if that's also a function of in smaller and less, I guess, urgent circumstances, people feel more comfortable expressing their racism. And
so part of what I wanted to say is that for a lot of organizers and for myself, so much of this isn't new.
Right.
Now, to the extent that it's publicly are sort of aired in the more, like the dirty sort of laundry is now being put out there for everybody to see. The type of, everyday actions, like every day we're almost seeing somebody calling the police on somebody, some white person in some neighborhood complaining about a barbecue or a child selling water, or like those things are the type of daily mundane microaggressions that so many people see all the time. And these are not surprising. I think what's surprising is the extent to which now larger blocks of the public are surprised by what seems to be an uptick in things that are really normal for a lot of folks.
Right.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a store and been followed. I went to an office today to give a talk at a law firm as an invited guest and was asked by the white attendant if I was there to make a delivery, right? Like, I'm not surprised then when, and I looked at him, I'm like, I said, I'm here to go to such and such law firm. Are you making the delivery? No, I'm not. But like, that is the type of everyday type of practices that some people are not surprised by. I say that to say like what we're seeing with the Trump admin is representative of a type of common experience set, right? White rage and responses to the backlash that comes as a consequence of that. The sort of the new KKK that doesn't have the hood but have a crop cut but can still carry a conservative flag and join a march. Those are things that people are very well aware of. So when we're talking about the movement for Black Lives, I don't think people are surprised in as much as they are having to just rethink what's necessary to do work today, given the context that we've been exposed to in terms of policy. That makes sense.
Yes, and that's actually what I'm asking about, right? I mean, one that is because yes, I think video cameras, the ubiquity of phone cameras has, I think, made white people more conscious of what black people have gone through on a daily basis for generations. But I guess what I'm asking about specifically is that last part. Is that notion of like, I mean, look, if I was a healthcare activist, right, and I was developing policy papers for healthcare, my whole perspective has to fundamentally shift when we're just talking about like, are they going to get a 50% cut on navigators? And so I'm asking from that perspective, with the idea of like the theory of change that BLM activists had. What's the process of sort of reorienting towards an administration that is totally hostile, right? As opposed to one where we need to find the right people and.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of reorientation that's done. So there's talk around, what does sort of allyship look like? As one example, the idea that large constituencies and blocks. How do you get to the people who see this as being okay, right? Like, how do you talk to quote unquote middle America, whatever that's imagined to be, right? Or how do we get, progressive allies and anti-racist white advocates to work, for example, in a like this within their own communities to sort of undo not only the ideology but to work on public policy. There's a lot of reorientation. How do you think about the connection between not just the violence that comes down from policing to something like reproductive rights? It means that because we do realize that the rolling back of like the possibility that Roe versus Wade can be, the attack on Title X, these are also issues. So what I will say is that the policy table has been clear at thinking about the interconnection between these things and realizing that it takes coalition. Does this make sense?
Yes.
That it isn't just about single variable, that undocumented folk, that is a part of the Black Lives Matter platform too. And it really is, right? Reproductive rights and women's bodily autonomy is part of this too. So I think the shift, or at least the overwhelming importance of coalition building, as in terms of a practice, like of a movement practice, but also what it means to think about policy making through coalition building is also another critical point, or at least a critical reorientation right now.
That's a fascinating point. Darnell Moore, author of No Ashes in the Fire, Coming of Age, Black and Free in America. Thank you so much for your time today. We'll put a link, obviously, to your book at majority.fm. Thanks again for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Welcome back. That was Darnell Moore, No Ashes in the Fire, Coming of Age, Black and Free in America. Really good book. We are going to head to the fun half, 646-257-3920 if you want to join us. I'm going to fire up the IMs in a second. Tonight at 7 p.m., we are live with The Michael Brooks Show. Doug Lane is the guest. We're talking about September 11th, Iraq, the financial crisis, and why Marx can allow us to reclaim the future. It's going to be sort of like how we got here and opening up our parameters of imagination through basically radical political analysis. Also, a sort of mini primer on the history of the drone program. We've got shout outs. We've got banter. We've got a very full post game. Check us out if you haven't already. It's time, patreon.com/TMBS. Also, we're about 7 people away now from the first 7,000 subscribers on the Michael Brooks Show YouTube channel. We hit some of the same things, definitely, that you would follow on any good lefty political channel, but probably a lot more international stuff. And we are also closely monitoring the dork web, or the jerk off encirclement. What do we call it?
The jerk encirclement. Well,
the jerk encirclement.
The dark enlightenment is sort of that's not really mainstream at this point, but that's sort of like the neo-feudalist, fascists.
Or as I like to refer to it, the endarkenment.
The in-loserment.
Well, I actually taught Jamie, I don't know if you remember this, but darkle is a word.
Oh, yes.
It's the opposite of sparkle.
Corey Pine was revealing Peter Thiel's connections to the Dark Enlightenment.
Yeah.
Some really good reporting.
They did an
like
election watch party.
Yeah. Hey, guys. What
the
if
jerk
we-
encirclement.
The jerk encirclement.
The
I'm not.
dork enlightenment.
That's the thing. Peter Thiel is actually a little. He's not trying to be a jackass on podcasts and try to look cool. He's just quietly. I'm just trying to create fascism. I don't need you plebs to like me because I'm better. I wish I could kill you with laser beams from my eyes.
He's working on it. He's drinking blood in his castle, and he's working on it.
I'm working on it. We got a lot to get to in the fun half. Jamie, what's up?
Well, this week on the Antifada, we dropped the first in our new series called History is a Weapon. Sean talks about historical materialism and how it can help us understand the world and capitalism and ultimately make the world better. We also have an episode coming out tomorrow with comedian Jake Flores, who you may remember as the guy who got visited by DHS when he tweeted jokes about ICE.
As I said, I mean, it was violence. We can agree to that, right? Do you remember that caller? That caller might be a contender, like a one-time caller who could be the dumbest caller
They might
we've
have
ever
repented.
had. Yeah. Okay.
Tweeting is violence. That's right, folks.
Right.
But yeah, we had a great conversation with Jake. He's a really smart guy, funny guy. We talked a little bit about humor. We had a little bit of a back and forth debate about that for a minute. We talked about how Jake became a socialist. We talked about the relationship between politics and art. All kinds of stuff. Oh, also he told a very funny story about Joe Rogan that I think we will probably release as an extra because it ran a bit long. But yeah, you want to tune in for that. Oh, and History is a Weapon. I shouldn't say this, but we're probably going to unlock it at some point in time. But, you know, if you want to listen to it now, you can give us money. And that'd be great.
Woof, woof. For the unlock. Woof, woof.
Literary Hangover this week, coming Saturday, I think it was a stretch for a drop, but
It was a stretch. I like that one though. I want.
I
that
don't
one
understand
to work
it.
more.
There's all these Air America ones that like have cobwebs on them and like.
Yeah,
you
I
can
don't.
dust
I
them
have
off.
no idea what woof woof means, but I like dogs,
Yeah.
and I think of like a dog that's like excited. It's like, oh, woof woof, unlock the content.
That dog sounds very nonplussed.
Yeah.
That's why it's sort of funny though. It's like
It's like still
woof,
curled up on
woof,
the mat.
whatever. All right, you're right. Didn't work.
Literary Hangover. We're doing Scarlet Letter on Saturday. LiteraryHangover.com
Say, baby,
or
put down
Patreon.com
that pipe
slash.
and get my pipe
That's what.
up.
That's what. Chili
that
works.
one worked.
Yeah, exactly.
No, tell it again. I'm sorry.
No, we're just doing Scarlet Letter. Patreon.com slash Literary Hangover.
All right, guys. See you in the fun half.
Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous, you're a little bit upset, you're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude, you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy!
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey Sam, hey Andy, you guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow. But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
No, welcome back. I get so lost in that song that I can't keep track of time. Welcome to the fun half, everybody. Let's go. What is that? All right, you know what? Let's just let's just get some just base fun stupidity out of the way. And I'm going to put on my Ashton Kutcher style Majority Report hat for this. Let's do the golden eye. The least that Donald Trump can do for us is be entertaining, because this is he's just a pest. He's just a disgusting, grotesque pest. And in any type of sane world, it would be like you would see like a news alert on your phone or something, and it would be like, Donald Trump's feuding with Rosie O'Donnell, and you'd be like, oh, I don't care. And that would be all you would know about Donald Trump. This is, I think this is the same guy that did the Darth Trump.
I don't know that for sure.
We don't know that for sure.
Let's pull back.
All right, this is This is Donald Trump golden hair.
This is Hugh Parkinson, and it looks like ABC News Australia, which is a public broadcasting service, put up the money to do this, which is pretty awesome. That's the type of public spirited broadcasting we need.
Indeed. Let's check this out. It's pretty funny.
Well, it's 32 million. It's up to you, Mr. Bond.
32 million. I guess you did a good job. We did it together.
The last thing we want to do is escalate the situation.
Sorry to keep you waiting. Complicated business. A letter was given to me by Kim Jong-un, and that letter was a very nice letter. Oh, would you like to see what was in that letter?
Did it say anything else?
I haven't seen the letter yet. I purposely didn't open the letter. I haven't opened it. I didn't open it in front of the director.
Oh, grow up, 007.
Now, they were saying, what do you think President Trump had to do with it? I'll tell you what. Like, how about everything? We're doing very well in terms of the summit with North Korea. I think people want to see if we can get the meeting and get something done. It's a getting to know you meeting plus. And that can be a very positive thing. Little rocket man. And it's frankly disgusting the way the press is able to write whatever they want to write.
I want full newspaper coverage. I want TV. I want radio. I want us on the air 24 hours a day.
The bloody hell was that?
You know who that is, right? That's called the fake news. Fake news.
We prefer not to get our bad news from CNN.
Fake news.
With great respect, a man like him could blow my cover.
By the way, you don't mind if I go off script a little bit, because, it's sort of boring.
That's a real 007 line right there.
I think we should leave it there.
Yeah, I think we should leave it there.
Check it out. Hugh Parkinson. That's Donald Trump's golden hair.
I feel like that is how Donald Trump wants to be viewed. That is like his fantasy life.
Yeah, but in his mind, none of it is funny.
No, it's
just impressive to everybody.
It's just cool. Everybody sees it. You're calling from an 808 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, but in his mind, none of it is funny.
You're calling from an 808 area code. Are you there? Yeah, hello. You got to
Hello,
turn off your
is,
computer.
Steve?
Hello?
Is Matt there? Is Matt Leck there?
Yeah, what's up?
How's it going? This is Communist Putin. You talked about me yesterday.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm just going to say that, well, you guys have the Five Guys, the how you say, hamburger joint in America. Well, currently under my regime, we have Five Guys: Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin, and Mao.
That's
Also,
good stuff. It's a good impression. It was great. It's great. We're overwhelmed by it. Thank you. It's a tremendous call.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. We're just going to have a much tougher approach. In the previous 10 years, Sam was gentle on all the callers, and people called.
Hey,
They called. They had no plans.
Egalitarian commentary.
You get in, you get out.
You get in, you get out.
Don't invest much.
Don't invest much. It was a good concept.
Yeah, that's.
You're calling from a 605 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, is this me?
This is you.
All right. My name's Dylan. I'm calling in from Wyoming.
What's up, Dylan? What's going on?
Yeah. I was just having a conversation with my friend Steve the other day. We were both
good guy.
Concerned about. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve. You and Steve are
Okay.
concerned about what?
Yeah. The future of the workers' movement happening over the next 5 to 10 or 15 years or whatever, with the decentralization of labor holding the majority of the power over the people who hold the capital, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And the concern of that movement and its growth and the centralization of labor as a result of automation. And so basically, I was wondering what you guys thought about the rise of automation and the rate at which that's going to continue to grow and the threat that would have on an organic workers' movement.
I think the automation is oversold, to be honest with you. I think that it doesn't. I mean, automation could be in the right hands would just mean less work for everybody, which would actually be a great thing.
Right.
But it hasn't been the case. I mean, I guess there's two parts of what you're asking. One, I'm a little bit more skeptical of the robots are going to take your jobs narratives. They've been around since at least the 90s, and I don't know, or actually much longer than that, but like, certainly not now is joblessness driven by automation, right? So it's a potential future problem. And I think the real question still remains how you get labor power in control of politics. And that would mean that automation means something entirely different if it starts to play the role that people keep anticipating it will. It doesn't now. So I think in some ways it's kind of a distraction conversation at the moment from the work of getting power to labor. I mean, it's important, it's interesting, it's worthwhile. But yeah, that's my basic sense of it.
I mean, I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Like, we do have places already where workers have been replaced by computers. Like, there are restaurants where you now just punch in your order and it like comes out of a door. And I'm sure that will continue as, companies decide to replace humans, which can be annoying with their needs to like go to the bathroom and stuff, with robots.
But it's not empirically shown that it's like anywhere near the type of rate or level of sort of intervention in the economy that the conversation would make it seem to be, right?
But
like
it is happening. But you do reach a bottleneck because as we know from Marx, and I think as corporations know from experience, it's much easier. You can only extract surplus value from workers, from humans. So when the organic composition of capital rises, or what that means is the money that they invest in equipment and stuff other than people, the rates of profit tend to fall. So that is one sort of check on the power of automation to take away power from workers. But people have organized around without being workers around many different things in the past. And we can look to something like the National Welfare Rights Organization. In the 60s and 70s, we did an episode on the Intifada about it, for how people who are not currently in the traditional job market, who are not currently working traditional employment jobs, can organize still. So like this was an organization of welfare recipients, for example, who did all sorts of things to agitate for their rights. But I do think it's an important thing to consider, because what is the primary power of workers? It's to, withhold their labor and shut things down. And like that is one thing I worry about with a right UBI, right? Because libertarians want to give everyone a UBI so they have just barely enough to survive on, and then they don't need our labor anymore. So that could be bad.
Oh, UBI is very dangerous, no doubt. Thanks for the call, man. Matt, do you have something you wanted to get in on that?
No, not super related, but I remember a Matt Stoller tweet and I couldn't find it. But basically the idea that the monopolization and centralization, he talks about centralizers, economic centralizers, and so he's a big anti-monopoly guy. He's a monopolist, and he was talking with somebody about how, basically capitalism is shoring itself of all of its sort of democratic constituency by like making people like the old model where you stay with a firm for like 30 years is one where people have trust in corporations, but we have completely weaned people off that entirely.
Right. That's gone. Donald Trump not only takes September 11th seriously, he also takes the death of soldiers seriously. Omarosa, my girl, she's back. She's got some hot... Actually, you know what? If you're watching this on YouTube, let's just own that the title of this clip is much sexier than the actual content.
Yeah, we don't actually think there's much here.
There isn't really much here, although the end is actually very funny. So if you wait for the payoff of this over-minute clip, the frame is that he's sort of... Trump is not serious about soldiers dying in action. And I would say, like, honestly, this is a clip that Omarosa recorded from a White House meeting with junior level staff. This is from October 4th, 2017, or mid-level staff. Trump just sort of comes in and starts shooting the breeze. There were a couple of soldiers killed in action in Niger. And the frame that Omarosa has is that this is him sort of making light of them being dead. And if you... I mean, I would say by Trump standards, it's not making light of them being killed at all. It's just that Donald Trump is a milk-brain narcissist, and he just talks incessantly and in circles.
And I would hazard a guess to say that most previous presidents have talked in similar sort of casualness about similarly sort of tragic events.
The world ain't the West Wing. But the end here, there is a pretty funny kicker here to this just sort of stream of bloviating from Trump.
8 years, okay, and so they're good there. But what happens is now they flee, and they flee to Africa, and they flee to Niger and countries around there, and that's how these young people get attacked. And they got attacked by 50 real fighters, but these were people, in many cases, that were in the Middle East that now go to Africa to try and, cause problems there. And ultimately, they want to come back here because this is where they really want to be. So it's a rough business. I don't think I'd want to be a terrorist, right? It's not a good life, but it's the only thing that. What else is there? But that is, people.
The junior staff is really the ones that have, like, why are they laughing so hard at that?
Because they're idiots, and they also know that he likes to have a pliant audience, and it's a suck-up culture.
It sounds very, it is nervous laughter.
Yeah, it's nervous laughter for a goofball dictator.
What else is there? But that is, people don't say that. The reason they're there is because we forced them out, and there's not nearly as many. It's not nearly as intense, but it's pretty intense, and you see that happening. So that's that. I think Hillary's getting killed now with Russia. The real Russia story is Hillary and collusion.
Somebody told me. You just said somebody told me. That transition is awesome. It's like, yeah, it's terrorism, and it's tough, and they died, and we're working on it. But the real thing is Hillary's just getting killed in Russia, somebody told me. Of course, there has been a massive increase in civilian casualties globally since Trump took over the presidency. Under President Obama, there was a drone program which deployed heavily in Pakistan and Yemen and killed thousands of civilians and was sort of run by the CIA. Towards the end of the Obama administration, Obama started to heed some calls to increase the transparency in the program and turn it over to the military, which is, in fact, a significant advance over it having been entirely sort of oversight-free with the intelligence services. Under Trump, it's going back to the CIA, and kinetic activities increased across, in fact, Africa. And we also saw, of course, last year the mother of all bombs dropped in Afghanistan. So Trump has significantly increased civilian casualties. There already were also high civilian casualties with the ISIS war and the Obama administration's strikes in Syria, focusing on ISIS. And those groups were already depreciating and degraded regardless because of their own sort of falling support inside the context of the Syrian civil war. So that's the not fun part of the milk brain narcissist president. In Michigan, how many? I think over 10 officials were finally indicted because of their roles in the poisoning of Flint's water. Flint's water is still certainly in question, and Governor Schneider hasn't been indicted, as in my opinion he certainly should be, the austerity anti-labor Republican governor who helped set the stage for the poisoning of Flint citizens. This is a great moment, actually. This is apparently, wait, is this we're starting on? Oh, it just cuts. Okay, so this is apparently from some type of Miss America contest, and Miss Michigan is going to actually take an opportunity to highlight an ongoing American crisis.
From a state with 84% of the U.S. fresh water, but none for its residents to drink, I am Miss Michigan, Emily Sioma.
Good for her. That's solid. That's exactly right. And also, you know, the degraded water infrastructure of this country and ongoing lack of public investment sets the stage for Flints across the country.
Yeah, and you know, the one reason this might get addressed is because it's not just poor neighborhoods. Obviously, those are probably the worst affected.
That's right.
But
of course,
the problem is we put a lot of these pipes in like 70 plus years ago, which is about the time they start leaching or need to be really careful about leaching lead into the water system. So, I mean, we have a lot of, I think, renovations or upgrades to do to our infrastructure that we've obviously haven't been doing in this country.
And that's lifelong. Right. You know, a child that drinks that, like the crimes that Michigan officials allowed to occur in Flint are a lifelong physical damage. And I don't want to say that, like, look, obviously there's a lot that can be done to address the problem, and I don't ever want to be in the position of saying that because somebody faced that they can't, you know, recover to the best of their possibilities, and there can't be massive social and policy interventions to counteract that. But this isn't a one-off. I mean, literally drinking lead. I mean, breathing lead is an incredibly seriously jeopardizing thing for your health. So these people have, you know, it's not in the past tense. They harmed people for life through austerity policies and through systemic lack of care for working class people. That's it. It's disgusting.
And the damages are possible to quantify yet.
Yeah, right.
Because they will keep on happening for years.
Exactly. What is it? Is this on the sheet? The Fox and Friends clip?
Oh yeah, this is the Deb Holland. This is number.
Which one is this one?
7.
Number 7. I don't understand this.
This is about. We had Deb Holland on. Sam talked to her in New Orleans. I believe.
She was the Native American woman. She's running for Congress in New Mexico.
Yeah,
she was on the Netroots Nation with Sam. She's a great candidate.
And her opponent is on here, and being asked about. What's it like to face the first Native American in a Congress.
Wait, Janice Arnold is running against Deb Haaland, who would be the first Native American woman elected to Congress. And here's Janice Haaland playing some great Fox News identity politics and reminding you why you need to go out and vote for Democrats this November.
And your opponent, she would be the first Native American as a woman in Congress.
That's what they say, yes.
That's what they say. What do you mean by that?
Well, I would say there's no doubt that her lineage is Laguna, but she is a military brat just like I am. And so, I think it evokes images of that she was raised on a reservation. She belongs to a pueblo and wonderful lineage. And that confuses me because here she is advocating for open borders, and the people most vulnerable are our sovereign tribes and pueblos, where there is little law enforcement, and they would be the most vulnerable.
Wow. So that was a perfect Republican move there. She did all of it.
Grade A concern
Grade
trolling.
A concern trolling. Disingenuous suburban mom with a massive dose of barely concealed racism. A demand that somebody who had a life experience you haven't had prove their bona fides to you. And then a reverse axle where a group of people that I have no doubt this woman, Janice Arnold, will go into Congress and vote to harm their health, harm their environment, harm their sovereignty with every single vote. In fact, Lisa Murkowski is facing pressure on the Kavanaugh vote specifically because Kavanaugh could be the deciding vote in a ruling which could destroy the livelihood of Alaskan fishermen. And she's getting a specific local set of concerns and pressure on that vote in Alaska. Native peoples are, of course, systemically disenfranchised and abused in this country. And Janice Arnold obviously would be a vote for that. And she has the gall to say, like, hey, I don't see you in a reservation. Where's the teepee at? Yeah. I don't see any blah, 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 blah. That's literally what she just did.
Yep.
That's one of the most, wow.
Yeah, I can't
that is some
believe that.
shameless shit right there.
I'm surprised she didn't call her Pocahontas.
She's not exactly Pocahontas.
Oh, it's more like GI Pocahontas because she was a
Yeah.
military
Yeah.
brat, so it's not like she was actually born in a teepee.
I've never seen her working with turquoise and sitting on the corner in Santa Fe.
Yeah, I don't think her dad was a medicine man, so I think we're gonna have to question.
And what's
what a
that
Native
thing
American
like? Native
is.
people should be the most, the biggest fans of American border security. What the fuck?
You mean like because we violated their borders and committed genocide
and,
against
like,
them?
surrounded them with our borders?
And
like-
surrounded them with our borders, so now that they should support putting children from Latin America in cages and ethnically cleansing America so that they can elect idiots like that who will vote to pollute their natural resources and violate their sovereignty. That's why they should support those policies. Guys, you got to vote.
Turn out for Deb Haaland.
Turn out for Deb Haaland. She's a great candidate. You got to vote. These people need to be not only beat, they need to be humiliated electorally. There needs to be a mass social register across the country that this collection of mutants, racists, scumbags, concerned trolls, and at the end, of course, just the sort of pure tools and sort of bag men and women of oligarchs should be publicly shamed and humiliated and destroyed electorally. And I would also continue in a totally nonviolent way, in a totally way that doesn't, cross any obvious boundaries. They shouldn't be allowed. This woman shouldn't have a nice meal out either. Fuck her. It's disgusting. It's disgusting.
And maybe when the Democrats win, we can have the debate that we should be having, which is full communism versus social democracy. Instead of just having to argue for our basic rights to be alive and get an abortion and not put kids in cages.
I wanted Hillary Clinton to be president, first of all, because I can obviously note the difference between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And really anybody who's still having that argument now has completely invalidated themselves. But also because, yes, that's the fight I want. I want a fight between the neoliberal center and an actual left policy.
I was hoping it was going to be us versus tech and finance.
Yes, I thought I was going to spend all of these past 2 years battling Hillary Clinton and Mark Zuckerberg and Howard Schultz and Sandy, whatever the hell her last name is, and all of these people to really actually choose a democratic direction of real economic democracy, real universal social delivery over technocratic piecemeal fixes. That's what I thought the battle was going to be. Not against clown fascism and an overt reassertion of ethnic cleansing and white supremacy in America. That doesn't bring us forward. Although this is pretty fun. Hillary Clinton's not going to give us this kind of a big thumbs up next to the Flight 93 National Memorial Visitor Center.
Way to take it down, guys.
That is like the type of thing that like some dumb like 10-year-old who's trying to like provoke his parents would get like smacked by his mom for doing. Like you don't go to the memorial and give a thumbs up, you little bastard. You're grounded. Yep.
It's like one of those funeral selfies that dum-dums post on Instagram, a trend I identified a number of years ago. He's
Sounds
doing
great.
It. It's like
it's great.
Yeah, they took it down like John McCain.
Hashtag sad.
I prefer people that stop terrorist attacks and don't die themselves, but that's just me. That's just me.
They weren't captured either.
They weren't captured either, which I guess is better than being captured, but it was still pretty bad. If I was on the plane, I think it would be a pretty different thing. I guarantee you.
Someone needs to Photoshop an Instagram of Trump doing that. If he doesn't already have one.
But like the funny thing about that picture is, where would you put him that's more offensive than that? Like a 9/11 memorial.
No, you would put it in Instagram and write a caption and then go like, great day at the September 11th memorial, hashtag cool suit, hashtag sad,
17
hashtag
years.
my wife doesn't like me.
That's really true. You don't need to be a body language expert to read that. This is the mentality I thought we would be fighting. I thought under Hillary Clinton, there would be a battle between in this case, I'll just say actually just unbelievably delusional mindset here. And this is actually just shocking that somebody...
It's like almost chilling. It's almost beyond shocking.
Yeah, it's
chilling.
Just chilling. That's really the word. A couple of months ago on the Michael Brooks Show, we let Ezra Klein out of the gulag where he had been sentenced for various misdeeds. Of course, metaphorically speaking to you, ultra-sensitive, touchy people out there. And because he did a good job with a sort of unbelievable level of patience in allowing Sam Harris to show his racism, his egomania, and actually the fact that despite his very calm delivery, he's apparently some type of sort of bizarre emotional wreck without any empathy or historical awareness. And Ezra Klein did a very good job at that. And so we've sort of begged off Ezra Klein. And even the whole Vox crew did a good job with explaining again, and it's depressing that this needs to be explained again, that Charles Murray is not a scientist. He's a far-right think tank gremlin. That Sam Harris is not a dispassionate podcaster and neuroscientist. He's actually extremely ideological, but not even aware of his own ideology. So kudos to Ezra. And then this tweet comes out yesterday. And this is in a time, we can put it on the screen. I'll read it. Is it on the screen now? Over the years, I've come to think of the DC Silicon Valley difference like this. The DC mindset is shaped by watching solvable problems prove to be impossible to solve. The Silicon Valley mindset is shaped by watching the impossible problems prove possible to solve. That's next. This is a thread, right? Okay. So this in a time, I mean, this is like a tweet from like 2009. This is like Obama just got elected and there's books about, why can't we have iPhone government?
This is like the second TED Talk.
This is the second TED Talk. This is Cass Sunstein talking about iPhone government. That literally was a term. The Macron campaign, I guess, although they're several years behind us in France for this kind of talk, and Macron is already in the low 30s in his approval rating. So we've seen since let's just be super generous to Ezra. Let's say that people who are really ahead of the curve were already asking in the first part of the Obama administration, hey, wait a second. When are all of these tech firms going to produce any jobs? When are all of these tech firms, what's going on? Why doesn't Apple pay any taxes? Why is the money all laundered or held in a, Irish corporation? What about, what about our privacy? These companies obviously have no regard for any type of privacy in any way, shape, or form. They're essentially giant data collection agencies masquerading as picture sharing platforms. How do people actually make a living on these things? And this is all the questions that were started to be asked still in a time where undoubtedly, and everybody who's watching this, all of like the Musk cult people are going to be like, yeah, what has Silicon Valley ever done? Says the people broadcasting on YouTube through computers. Yes, undoubtedly, these companies took a platform and a technology that was built on public and government investment, and they turned it into a variety of both hardware and software, which have changed how we produce, how we engage in the economy, and in some incredibly selected examples, have given opportunities for people to have cool, fun careers. Thank you very much. Structurally, they have massively accelerated inequality. They have sort of privatized so many gains at such a disproportionate net to public investment that probably this is going to be the most we've ever seen in human history. And by 2014, there was enough people in sort of smart policy circles asking the questions. What about these monopolies? What about the inequality? What about the fact that now, after these sort of base engines of change, of personal computing, of smartphones, and all of these other economies, all these companies are doing now is essentially sort of sucking up investor money and creating different ways for people to get pizza on their phones. What are they doing? And then meanwhile, and companies like Uber are really changing things by literally breaking labor laws across the country in bets that, we'll just retroactively sort of pay off politicians after we're profitable enough from literally breaking the law. And by 2018, when bow tie Nazi fascist is on TV talking about the abuses of Amazon, Ezra Klein is still doing this? This is the type of mindset that is terrifying, because the last thing I'll say about this, we're not in some delusion about some like radical left fascist alliance to fucking end war and stop Amazon. We're not into that dumb delusional shit. We understand who Trump is. We understand who the far right is. We understand that their agenda is antithetical to everything we value and everything we care about. But at some point, we are going to need to have people who are our presumptive allies, even just functionally speaking, to at the very least have some basic understanding of how the world works, even if our solutions are different. And Ezra Klein still coming out with this stuff on September 10th, 2018 is chilling, to say the least.
Yeah, I also want him to be a little more specific about what problems Silicon Valley is solving, right? Because what they see as problems, we might see as, I don't know, workers, the regulatory state. Like, that seems to be the type of problem that they're the best at solving.
And like, they're really good at doing pointless things to get your attention. Like,
Right.
the attention economy is what drives most of like the consumer tech side of things. And then you have the giant monopolies, which is like, oh, you got a startup that if you have a successful startup, what that means is you sold it to one of the big four.
You got acquired by one of the big four. Exactly.
And I think that's the play that he's making right now, is saying, hey, Vox needs money.
Yeah, so he's actually, so there's a savviness here where he's saying, I have a possibly in DC, they say, had to have profitable policy journalism's an impossibility that can't be solved. In Silicon Valley, there's a Google acquisition by Vox that makes us tens of millions of dollars, which could be a great solution.
It gives us 4 more years, and then we'll have to lay off half the staff.
Respect the hustle.
I do actually respect the hustle. That's actually the least disturbing version of that argument that of that tweet that I've heard.
I'd respect it more if he hadn't tried to break his union when I might be confusing this BuzzFeed. I'm sorry.
I think
Did he-
BuzzFeed
oh,
did that.
okay. Retracted.
I don't
Retracted.
know about that. God, do we really want to give the Canadian fascist guy attention? I see him on the sound sheet. The Nike meltdown.
I'd say
wanna
we
do
might
that?
save that guy for Sam and that caller that wanted us to know why we call him a lunatic, maybe.
Okay. He is a lunatic caller. I'm just going to read briefly from this. This is the final address that Salvador Allende gave to Chile. He was killed 45 years ago as part of a U.S.-backed coup which brought Augusto Pinochet to power. Pinochet killed thousands. He pioneered methods. I believe he pioneered the helicopter method of cutting people's stomachs out up in the air and then dropping them into the ocean so they sunk to the bottom. And of course was part of Operation Condor, where right-wing governments across Latin America coordinated with the support of Henry Kissinger and the U.S. intelligence apparatus to track down and murder leftists and liberals across Latin America. This is footage of the coup day, September 11th, 1973, brought to you by the CIA, the Nixon administration, and the Chilean military. Salvador Allende was very much a democratic socialist who was trying to bring his country forward in a social democratic manner. And I do think in some ways there are obviously some echoes with Lula da Silva and Brazil. This is from Salvador Allende. My friends, surely this will be the last opportunity for me to address you. The Air Force has bombed the towers of Radio Portales and the Radio Corporación. Apologies for my pronunciations. My words do not have bitterness but disappointment. May they be a moral punishment for those who have betrayed their oath. Soldiers of Chile, the titular Commander-in-Chief, Admiral Marzano, who has designated himself Commander of the Navy, and Mr. Mendoza, the despicable general who only yesterday pledged his fidelity and loyalty to the government, and who also employed himself Chief of Staff. Given these facts, the only thing left for me is to say to the workers, I am not going to resign. Placed in a historical transition, I will pay a price, pay for loyalty to protect the people of my life. And I say to them that I'm certain that the seed which we have planted in the good conscience and thousands of Chileans will not be shriveled forever. They have strength and they will be able to dominate us, but social progress can be arrested neither by crime nor force. History is ours, and people make history. Workers of my country, I want to thank you for my loyalty that you have always had and the confidence that you deposited in a man who is not only an interpreter of the great yearnings of justice, who gave his word that he would respect the Constitution and law and did just that. At this definitive moment, the last moment when I can address you, I wish to take the advantage of the lesson. Foreign capital, imperialism, together with reaction, created a climate in which the armed forces broke their tradition and the tradition taught by General Schneider and reaffirmed by Commander Arrieta. Victims of the same social sector will today be in their homes hoping with foreign assistance to retake power, to continue defending their profits and their privileges. And it goes on. So we note that history and how it still plays out today.
I think we also need to take some lessons from some of the mistakes that he made, though. Like, Allende was such, like, just a great guy, great socialist, but there were some mistakes along the way that we can see in hindsight. Like, just the idea that the right wing will ever respect any kind of norms of democratic government is a falsehood. Like, he appeased Pinochet by appointing him head of the army and eventually chief of staff. And that didn't work. Obviously, it went very badly. When there was coup attempt after coup attempt before the one that finally worked. And he was still saying, we have to respect the democratic process. And the people were begging the government to arm them. And they put down some of these armed rebellions and said,
I just think it's,
wait.
I think,
and it was a sincere miscalculation. And
I think it's
he died for it.
really important to just be mindful of, like, injecting ourselves into those circumstances and those calculations, right? Like, I mean, I think there's truth to what you're saying, and Castro certainly said that to him. And I also think that, like, first of all, I'm not going to judge the man's ideological commitment which I think was sincere to democratic process. And then also,
I think it was
I definitely
too.
know if you talk to, to Chileans who've lived it, it's like it. I guess I'm just, I don't know. I'm just very hesitant to like retroactively read us in our comfort and circumstances of like what people should have done. And even if that was even in that situation in any way really realistically possible. If you armed a handful of workers, that would not be
people were
enough.
already armed and the government took their arms away.
It would not have been enough to have any reversal of a military coup. Like when they made that decision and they made that move, there was nothing that was going to stop it. And he might have been wrong in trying to appease them, but that might have been his only play.
Well,
so
I think we can learn some things without being shitty to the legacy and the memory of Allende. And like, I don't pretend to be an expert on this. I went to a talk that I thought was very good at the Socialism Conference. They obviously had a point of view as well, but yeah, we can respect it and we can learn from it and carry it into the future. And sometimes you do have a better perspective from the future, and that's not like, it's not their fault that they didn't have it at the time. It's very, very hard to know what to do. And like, no, there's no proof that it would have worked to have an armed struggle against
and in
the
most
coup.
of these
But
places,
it might have.
And in most of these places, it didn't. Like, it worked in Cuba in super specific circumstances, and it kind of worked in Nicaragua. It did work partially in Nicaragua. And then, like, in most other places, particularly ones analogous to Chile, like in Brazil, the military dictatorship was not brought down by guerrillas at all. It was actually brought down by independent labor movement and people like Lula. And eventually, when the military dictatorship was brought down in Chile, it was actually, it was brought down by really like a totally civic mass protest movement with like clever ad campaigns. So that is how it ended up playing out. I hear what you're saying. I agree with it, but I also just, I don't know, I get really hesitant to read stuff like that retroactively when obviously we weren't there. I wish actually that Allende shot Pinochet. That would be cool. But I don't think it was I don't think Pinochet came. It would have been awesome if Pinochet came in personally and Allende was like, "You thought I was a real pussy, didn't you?" And he just like popped him in the face.
Well,
that would have been a great moment.
It would have. Like the one of the lessons that I took from it anyway was that when you are trying to transition from capitalism to socialism, as Allende was, the electoral process can be many steps on the way. It can be very important, but it's never going to be the final step when you have an heavily armed and violent resistance on the part of the international ruling class.
I think of Lincoln suspending habeas corpus,
right?
And I think you do eventually you come to those moments where it's like, we got to do something like this, and the thing to do is not pretend like you're not breaking that value, whether it's democracy or habeas corpus or what have you. The important thing is to reify it while you break it. Right. And it's sort of like that guy who called about like, well, what if you needed torture? You had a 24 like situation. Well, guess what? If I'm the torturer there, and I know that I can get this information that's going to save us. Obviously, we all know this scenario is dumb, but let's just grant it for a second. Then I'm going to torture him, and then I'm going to serve my time because torturing is against the law, and you can't do it.
Well, what's funny,
I'll
though.
know that I'll have saved people anyway, so guess what? That's a price I'll be willing to pay as an actual hero.
Right. I mean, I think the one to look at maybe, again, it's a much less developed country with different types of stratification, but like, arguably, Michael Manley kind of tried to straddle that line in Jamaica, right? Like, there were always elections in Jamaica, and his agenda wasn't even particularly radical. And partially this already existed before Manley and before Seaga in the 70s, but like, you had armed gangs affiliated with both political parties, and the CIA trained and coordinated, no doubt, with the right-leaning ones, and the Cubans came in and trained and armed up Manley's ones, and they lost because when Kissinger and the United States put their attention on destabilizing the Jamaican economy, it happened, even though they had their own like gun units and their own, and also that led to them committing a lot of their own atrocities, like for sure, right? Because they also had to play the game of like burning down each other's constituencies to create room for their voting blocks. And, that's how it played out until like the early 90s. And then the right just won and dominated electorally.
Well,
and
I think that's something to be said for focusing on revolution here in the heart of empire, whether it's a political revolution or what have you, because there are third worldists out there who think that, the only revolution that's even valid that can happen is in developing countries right now, and that everybody, all workers in the U.S. are like the ruling class of the world. And the conclusion there is basically we can't really do anything. But like when revolutions happen in the developing world, they are subject to U.S. foreign policy. So that's a reason why we need to stay here and we need to fight.
And even in a case like in Jamaica, where, Manley did have relations with Cuba and he was a supporter of like liberation struggles in Africa. But again, he was super moderate. A big precipitating event for the U.S. targeting Jamaica that's fairly well reported is Kissinger coming to Jamaica on vacation and wanting to meet with Manley, and Manley being like, you have to come to my residence. I'm not going to go see you. And like that type of shit. Literally. This is very disrespectful. We're going to...
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, of course.
About democracy. Like, in terms of democratic socialism, which we talk about a lot on the show,
I think I worked that one. Yes, Democrat. Yes.
A lot of people talk about democratic socialism, and we can't confuse the bourgeois democracy that we currently have in America with democracy as a whole, small d democracy, right? Because a revolution, even though it doesn't go through the route of bourgeois electoralism, can be democratic if everybody agrees on it, right? If the majority agrees on it. So I just want to expand the concept a little bit. And most people probably know that already, but just putting it out there.
Even in liberal terms, democracy is much broader than just voting. There's a lot more at stake in a healthy democracy. Totally. You're calling from a 713 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Travis. I'm passing through LaGrange right now.
Hey, what's up? What's on your mind?
Hey, got a couple things. First, I want to give a shout-out and a shofar to my younger brother who, tabling for UT Young DSA the other day, got 70 people to sign up.
Oh, wow.
And thank you. He's listening to this right now, I'm sure. Shout-out, Will.
What's up, Will?
Number two, Beto O'Rourke is going to win.
It's looking good. Why? Why do you say that? I have a good feeling about it, but honestly, it's just because, like Mick Mulvaney said, sometimes people are just too unlikable. And I think, Beto O'Rourke just
for the
seems
Republicans, it's hard to actually vote for Ted Cruz.
And it's funny because I got to admit, when I first heard about Beto O'Rourke, I maybe just because it was Texas, to be honest, and his profile, my mind kind of went to, I don't even remember his name. Who was the guy in Georgia?
Ossoff.
Yeah, I went there. I was like, this is another, it's another suburban, whatever.
Ossoff wouldn't have said the thing about the kneeling.
Well, that was the first thing. I was like, Ossoff would never make a courageous, clear stand for the NFL players, I don't think. And then secondly, I watched an interview. I don't even remember where with him. And again, I put a pretty big premium, like it or not. I do think a lot of things that people might deem to be less important or superficial matter a lot. And I watched it and I was like, oh, okay, yep. This guy's super likable. He's normal. He's relatable. It was like, yeah. It seems to me that he's in play. That's awesome.
I think he's absolutely going to crush it. The latest Emerson poll had Cruz up by 1.
Yep.
So things are looking extremely realistic. And I think he's a tall, handsome guy with good values. So definitely get out there and vote for him. And then the other thing I want to touch on real quick, patreon.com/TMBS, the best value for your money. Tune in tonight. I'll see you then.
That was the best call that's ever happened on this show. Thank you.
Do you guys know each other?
No, we don't. That was Travis from LaGrange with the best call that ever happened on the Majority Report. Do we actually have the Beto O'Rourke talking about? I don't think we ever played it. Do we have that handy? If we can get it handy, I'll take another call, but maybe if it's handy, we ought to play it because I do think that really does set him apart. And it's also, you know what it is? It's also smart politics. So the thing I also like about him is it also seems to me that he's one of these guys that actually gets that in the terrain you're playing in now, to be a Democrat, even a Democrat who's, more center left and in Texas, you still need to drive out your people and be clear about who side you're on. You're calling from a 928 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Rick. I'm from Yuma, Arizona, and I wanted to talk about identity politics. Is that okay?
I will tell you in about 30 seconds or not whether it's okay. So go for it.
Yeah, because we're gonna talk about Nicki Minaj trying to play identity politics against Cardi B, man. You know what I'm saying?
I was
talk about that one.
really hoping it was you. I was scared, but I was holding out hope that this was going to be cool.
Oh, man. All right.
Whose side are you on that one, by the way? Whose side are you on?
It's supposed to be the fun half, but y'all ain't having fun right now, man. So let me get it popping, man. All right?
Well, it's getting
All right,
deep.
So check it out.
Yeah, tell me what's up.
Okay. I have bad reception where I'm at right now, so just let me know if I'm cutting off. But
no, you're good. Go
basically, man, like here's the thing. Nicki, being the pure MC type, Nicki can rhyme. So I think Nicki probably feels like, yo, this bird bitch fucking came up through love and hip hop, social media, is not a true MC. Why should I surrender my title? But she don't understand. The people never really liked Nicki Minaj. She was just the only person to pick from.
Oh, shit.
And so
you got to have the fucking Jamaican horns ready at some point. Wait, say it again. The people never really liked Nicki Minaj. Let me just do this. I'm trying. Look, this needs a sound effect. Okay, why do the people never like Nicki Minaj?
Who doesn't like Nicki Minaj?
A lot of people don't like Nicki Minaj.
It's because Nicki Minaj never came off as personable. She's a great MC. She can rhyme. But like with Cardi, you listen to her, man, and you like it. It's like Nicki Minaj is a better rapper, but whose music would I listen to? Cardi, no doubt about it.
Because Cardi's just like fun, and Cardi likes FDR.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Nicki Minaj is more of like a prosperity gospel, whereas Cardi B has a class analysis that's very apparent.
That's not fun, Jamie. This is the fun half. Okay. All right, now,
it's fun for me. Okay. Different things are fun for different people.
I'm just messing with you, Jamie, but I get your point. I'm just messing with you. But check it out. When I talk about identity politics, it's because, check it out, Nicki Minaj on her radio show was going off, which I sort of don't respect. It's like, man, Cardi was going off to your face, talking about, I'm going to beat your ass. You going off on your radio show with Funk Flex?
Yeah.
Come on, man.
I feel you.
So
we got some footage here.
Talking about.
Okay, it's not good? All right, go ahead.
Okay. She went off on her radio show talking about, Cardi called black women roaches and this and that. Coming from the same broad who said these nappy-headed hoes need a Perminator on that song Did It On Them. Don't try to play the black card right now.
That's Matt's favorite Nicki Minaj
shit.
song, actually. Yeah.
I'm a total barb.
Yeah, that's Matt's favorite Nicki Minaj song. He likes that one.
It's mine too, man. It's mine too. That's why I'm the horn.
Well, at the risk of being
I got to tell you something. It is pretty shocking that I would pick, just in like a World Cup sense, to pick Dominican Republic over Trinidad is very unusual for me, and I think that also speaks volumes about this conflict.
Oh my God.
I mean, it just you knew it was going to jump off, man. You knew
it was happening. That was clearly boiling for a long time. I was kind of surprised, but but didn't Cardi got welted up though, right? That's the picture I saw.
Something happened, but hold up. Of course you don't get welted up when it's 1-on-20. Come on, man.
I agree.
I agree. Cardi said, "I'll see you right here, right now," like a typical Project Broad gonna do. And Nicki played that. Oh well, I have too much class. My money's too long. I'll get you touched. You should have touched that broad when you had the chance.
I think that's exactly what Sam was saying about it when it first popped off.
Well, at the risk,
Sam's really into his new life mode right now. Sam was texting me. He's like, "Why didn't Nicki touch it when it first popped off?" because she acts like she's all Hasididdy. And meanwhile, Cardi reps the projects. And I want to do different show planning. Do you see? Hello? Jamie, I'm not going to let you jump in unless it's fun. Unless it's fun, no jump in. It needs. Now, is it fun?
I don't know what's fun for you.
Okay, is it along the lines of who won the fight? Whose side are you on in this physical conflict? Whose rap do you like more? Who looks better in videos? That type of thing.
If I tell you the answer to that, can I say what I'm going to say? What I want to say?
No.
No. Or at least wait till he gets up. Yeah, we're trying to do fun half. Okay, go ahead.
All right. At the risk of sounding unfun, sorry guys. Why can't there be more than one female rapper who's great? Why do we gotta pit women against one another? I know, I'm the worst.
Oh my God. There can't be more than one man rapper that's great either.
That's not true.
It is. There's literally been people who have been murdered over that question.
So why aren't we arguing about Cardi B versus like Jay-Z, you know?
Because that's a ridiculous
argument. No. Let me answer this question.
Well, objectively, Jay-Z is better than Cardi. That's not. We could argue is, I don't know, maybe Lauryn Hill and Jay-Z.
Or some more appropriate,
maybe Lauryn Hill and Jay-Z.
Male rapper, okay?
Oh well, she is better than most analogous male rappers. That's why she gets more attention than them.
But I'm saying, why are we arguing a woman versus a woman?
Because they just fought. They're arguing.
We're not arguing.
They're arguing.
All
Stop
right, well, why are we feeding into
because it's the fun half.
Makes women
because it's the fun half. Boo. Boo, Mackinoff, boo. All right, go ahead, caller.
All right. All right. The reason why, we're talking about Nicki and Cardi is because at the end of the day, in rap, you got to take on your nearest and closest rival. Rap is not about unity and when it comes to competition. Yes,
and why is that rival always a woman if you're a woman?
It's a sport.
Because it's like sports.
It's a sport.
Yeah, it's like, exactly. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, you're explaining it.
Yeah. It's a sport, Jamie. It's one-on-one. It's MCing. It's you versus them. Who got the best lines? Who got the best rhymes? And you can't uplift your opponent. You got to stomp that bitch out, stomp that opponent out, and humiliate him. Let him know I'm number one. Like KRS One said, still number one. You know, that's why, Jamie.
I'm aware that much of rap is a battle. All right, I'm aware it's very hierarchical.
This sounds like the Who Is America NPR guy.
You sound like you sound like the Who Is America NPR.
Which, like, fine, whatever. I'm just trying to bring a little more gender parity to this battle. That's all.
I mean, if she threw
the word gender parity doesn't exist in the black community, so I'm gonna have to dead that, Jamie. I'm sorry. I like you, but we don't say that.
Everybody hates me now.
Go,
it's
man.
fine.
No, everybody. No. It's all love, but it's also the fun half, and we're gonna keep it fun because I have been remiss. Anything else? Any other? What is the character's name in the? I love the Dr. Nirachayan Degacello or something. The Sacha Baron Cohen character. All right, man. Thank you. All right, this is Beto O'Rourke, and this really did leap out to me. I don't think we played it at the time, but this was a great principled defense of people like Colin Kaepernick.
Peaceful, nonviolent protests, including taking a knee at a football game to point out.
This is music.
Oh God! I wish they did.
I wish they would
they're
stop doing
so
this.
So unnecessary to do this. Yeah.
That black men, unarmed, black teenagers, unarmed, and black children, unarmed, are being killed at a frightening level right now, including by members of law enforcement, without accountability and without justice. And this problem is not going to fix itself, and they're frustrated, frankly, with people like me and those in positions of public trust and power who have been unable to resolve this or bring justice for what has been done and to stop it from continuing to happen in this country. And so nonviolently, peacefully, they take a knee to bring our attention and our focus to this problem to ensure that we fix it. That is why they are doing it, and I can think of nothing more American than to peacefully stand up or take a knee for your rights anytime, anywhere, any place.
That's really beautiful. That was great. That's great. And I think that is the reading of the that's also, from a cynical political advice stance, that's the right thing to do. Like, even in Texas, there is no win. There's no Democratic base turnout in Texas where he gives some mealy-mouthed equivocation about that. You need people, frankly, of every background, okay, who are, is something playing? Who are concerned about the war on people of color by law enforcement. And also, frankly, we can expand that more even. Way too many people of every single background. It disproportionately affects people of color. But some of the states with the highest concentration of killing of civilians by police officers are in highly racially homogenous white states. Like, this is a problem that specifically impacts people of color disproportionately, obviously, like everything to do with the prison industrial complex and policing in general. But it actually, just as America is at large totally over incarcerated, this is a mass issue, and there's no profit in pretending otherwise. There's no people who have a bigoted, fear-based position who don't support the NFL protests who are going to vote for Beto O'Rourke. And there's no people that he needs to turn out to vote in Texas who are going to be impressed by mealy-mouthed bullshit and equivocations and not supporting the right side of that debate. And he called it. It's great. That is a very encouraging sign.
It also, like, I mean, you know, now we've seen that he might have a chance to actually win, but I never really was looking for that from him. So if you are running in this sort of maybe a year or a cycle early campaigns, why are you trying to save yourself from lumps anyway, right? Like, so there's two reasons to do the right thing here. You do the right thing so you can take the blame, take the fall for it, but then people see that somebody's willing to, like, stand up for what's right, even if it hurts them politically. And then next time around, it's not such a out there thing to do because you have a precedent for it.
Right. Let's do this sound. Is everybody ready to vote on Thursday? And who are we voting? We're voting for Cynthia Nixon, Jumaane Williams. Is that for Teach Out? It looks tough. It's a real uphill battle. Andrew Cuomo is a very formidable lead. But I still think it's an urgent political priority to remove him from office. This guy has one of the most regressive real estate finance-backed records in the country.
Real estate finance machine.
He is a real estate finance machine. He is a fusion of broken democratic machine politics and the most advanced oligarchic interests of the 21st century. And his record is terrible from the perspective of working class people in this state across the board. And here he is. This happened last week. He's celebrating.
This isn't him celebrating. This is
explain this.
Yeah, Peter Haskell of WCBS is driving by the old bridge here. Basically, they opened it, and then a few days or day or two later, the engineers were worried that the old bridge was going to actually fall on top of the new one. So here's some footage from this.
This was a day after they celebrated opening.
This is a day after Governor Cuomo came to celebrate the opening of a new bridge. Within days, that new bridge needed to be closed down because the Tappan Zee Bridge, which we're seeing now, is literally crumbling.
Which, I mean, it'd be nice if this was a closer race. I mean, maybe it is closer than the polls show, but like this sort of just bumbling, let's declare a victory. It's like the mission accomplished of bridges.
It's the mission accomplished of bridges. It's also very reflective of, this is Andrew Cuomo's governance.
Yes.
He loves a big flashy announcement that looks like we're moving forward on important things. And then when you peel back the substance of it, the whole foundation is crumbling. His free college proposal is totally bullshit. My understanding is it doesn't deal with board. It doesn't deal with books. It doesn't deal with any of the fundamentals that actually would put a financially pressed person through university, but it was a flashy thing and it got him to pretend to be of the new left wave. And he's opposed tax increases on millionaires in this state. He's opposed he even opposed and fought Bill de Blasio having a millionaire's tax fund universal pre-K, which de Blasio was still able to get through, and that has actually made a very significant material difference for people in New York City. This is Mario Cuomo. Tell me, what's the context for this?
Basically, this is Andrew Cuomo. So the bridge was named after his dad too, which is
right.
We should also. I'm just gonna play this here.
As E.B. White said, New York is to the nation what the white church spire is to the village, the symbol of aspiration and faith. The white plume saying the way is up, not down, not backward, up. Excelsior.
Still riding those coattails.
Vote Cuomo, not. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, he even inherits his speeches.
Vote the homo, not Cuomo.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And I don't have like hard data on this, but at least anecdotally, according to the people that I've talked to who have been canvassing in North Brooklyn for Julia Salazar and in other places, the results of the canvassing are more encouraging than the official polls. And
what
like,
are they looking like?
Almost nobody is excited to vote for Cuomo.
Right.
You know, like people are excited about these candidates. So
it's a small number of excited people versus inertia.
Yeah. I mean,
and the
if there's
polls have been wrong before.
Definitely. I mean,
especially
vote.
These last year.
Don't be discouraged. Go out and cast those ballots across the board.
You probably have like a good 10 points at least, like based on, I mean, just anecdotally what we've seen from races previously, like for Democrats.
Yeah, and if you live in North Brooklyn or parts of Queens, vote for Julia Salazar. Just do it. Her opponent takes more money from the real estate industry than any other state senate currently in New York, which is pretty bad for a neighborhood that's one of the fastest gentrifying neighborhoods in New York City and has lost hundreds, maybe thousands. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Don't quote me on that. Lots and lots of rent stabilized units under Martin DeLonge's watch. And there's also a candidate named Zelnor Myrie running in a different part of Brooklyn who's going to hopefully unseat one of those ghouls from the Independent Democrat caucus.
Yeah,
so,
that's you need to get all of those people out. And yes,
yeah.
DeLonge also inherited his position.
Martin DeLonge inherited his seat from his daddy. He's totally, the only thing he's effective at is doing the will of the real estate lobby in the state assembly in New York. That's it. Poor constituent services, no serious delivery, and all they've got are a bunch of other issues, which I'm not going to get into. I don't think we're going to get into them. I don't have a comment, honestly, on them one way or another, to be really blunt. But the big picture is what are you voting to advance, in my mind, and the choice there is very clear, minus the noise. Sorry. A few more calls and then we're going to go. But really briefly, just to confirm officially, Lula da Silva has ended his candidacy in Brazil. He's transferring his support to Fernando Haddad, who is the former São Paulo mayor. His vice presidential running mate is a woman who's the leader, a leader for the Brazilian Communist Party, and they are going to be running along with Ciro Gomes, who's a center-left candidate, to advance to the second round and beat Jair Bolsonaro, who is the fascist candidate. His reject rate since he's been stabbed has actually gone up.
Yeah, I noticed that. Brazil was saying he doesn't seem to have gained a whole bunch of support from them.
There was this initial sympathy bump, which you'd sort of just expect for anybody who lost 40% of their blood. But his reject rate I've seen in the latest poll has gone from 39 to 43%. And, basically Lula said, my voice is the voice of Fernando Haddad and all of the comrades in this fearless journey to rescue national dignity. And Haddad said, I've spoken to Lula and he's furious at so much injustice. Lula was the best president Brazil ever had, and we knew he would win this election, but unfortunately they insist on taking him out against the will of the people. Lula has asked, let's stay together, united, whatever happens, let's all vote for the PT. And that's absolutely the vote I would cast. And this is come on, Brazil. This is a massive, just horrifying judicial travesty in a country that has corruption cases from the 1990s that haven't even been adjudicated yet. the jailing of by far the most popular candidate and best president that they've had. But there's still a lot of opportunity. You're calling from a 510 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? 510. Going once, going twice. You're calling from a 775 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Reverend Aaron calling from Punks for Progress. What's up, Matt, Jamie, Michael?
What's up?
Hello.
And Brendan's also here.
Punks for Progress. What is that?
And Brendan. I'll get into that. But the reason I wanted to call was I wanted to talk about Dinesh D'Souza's new movie and the influence I've been seeing it have on people on the street, right?
Are you serious? Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah. So I've been out for the last couple years going to all these fascist events out in the Bay Area, right? And debating a bunch of these morons. And, starting 2 years ago, their line was pretty simple, right? It's free speech, American, patriot, and Antifa are the real fascists.
Mm-hmm.
And we laughed at that because it was totally unnuanced and basically just ridiculous,
People
right?
tweet that at me every day.
And you look at, since Dinesh D'Souza's movie came out, in the build-up to it and in the aftermath of it, I'm seeing so much more from these guys really espousing this rhetoric of, we're not just the real fascists. Hitler was also a liberal. So that means that not just Antifa are the real fascists, but your average centrist liberal is now pushing a fascist agenda
of course.
like Hitler did.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean,
they really love to conflate liberals and leftists. It's all the same to them.
And also it's all just wrong.
All the same.
Yeah.
It is
the
all
same
just
and
wrong. I
all
mean,
inaccurate.
every point in their stream of narrative completely can be debunked on its face. But it doesn't stop. I mean, we on the left,
it doesn't matter.
We're sort of Dunning-Kruger on it because we're like, oh, how could anybody buy this shit? Right? But they are. And when I went and saw Dinesh's movie in the theater, it was aging retired boomers that were sitting in that theater ingesting that shit. And they're the same people that are buying into QAnon.
Yeah.
It's not just these 20-something alt-righters in their LARPing gear anymore.
No, we've talked about
And
that, actually,
so-
why QAnon is appealing to boomers. We've talked about that on this show.
Yeah, like Matt Christman says, it's like
Yes, you have.
highlights for children for mush-brained baby boomers.
Right.
It's an activity book.
Thank you, Jamie. Oh, my gosh. Absolutely. And so, to me, it's just terrifying. One, because I think this is all going to work. I think that we're going to get a second Cheadle Nee term. And I think so. Because the base is completely they're on board. Obviously, that's not changed. This base hasn't changed. They've been locked in since the beginning. But I think they are winning over the aging people who are like, now they've gotten comfortable with them. We as people, when we get familiar with stuff, it gets easier to accept it, right?
Right.
And, of course, I mean, thank you for what you guys do every day pushing real progressives. Even though I'm an anarchist, and Jamie, I suggested before that you read Malatesta. I really hope you follow through with that.
He is on my list. You are not the first person who's told me that.
Malatesta is a great guy. Does a great job. Yes. Everybody loves All right, brother. I appreciate the call. We do have to kind of run, but I hope you'll call in again soon. I really appreciate the perspective.
Hey, I appreciate you taking the time, and I just want to say, please check us out, Punks for Progress on YouTube and Facebook. There's 5 of us. We're a national coalition. We got people on the West Coast and East Coast covering alt-right and just righteous street actions and stuff. So check it out and
Punks
have
for
a fantastic
Progress.
day, guys.
Punks for Progress on YouTube
right.
and Facebook. Thanks, brother.
That sounds right up my alley.
It's always a good day when you hear a punk say the word righteous.
I actually like, right. I like that. I feel that. Charles Furry, damn, back-to-back. Michael Winning, I'm headed to the NYC. Is there a good bar to watch the election results staying in Gowanus? Gowanus bar recommendations.
I don't know.
I don't spend time around Gowanus.
Local elections at a bar on a Thursday in New York, you're going to have to look.
That's some real,
some real
international content there.
I don't even know what we're doing. We're not doing a live coverage of that, right? Oh, I shouldn't have even said that out loud. Sorry to plant that idea.
I'm recording literary.
I'm busy Texas. Too. I have other things that are happening. I have a lot going on. Ryan, we all do. We can't do it. Sam, don't listen. Get back to shul. Conservatism is a lie based on lies, dependent on lies. Republicans are anti-education because these voters get educated. The Republican Party and their ideology becomes extinct. Ryan, NYC Mandahole, LOL, I love that Fun Half song. Yes, that is a funny Fun Half song. Share the Road. I'm an artist and work most of my political pieces while listening to old MR clips. Also, any updates on the Weird Mike doc? I just know, it is happening. I mean, I understand that it's taking a long time, but it is in fact happening. Charkis, Trump doesn't remember that there was a September 11th last year, exclamation point. Winnipeg Greg, I just wanted to say you guys are too harsh on Jimmy Dore, Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson, Charles Murray, etc. I also want you to fight Joe Rogan. I don't know how to search on YouTube, so please respond to each of these points in depth for me. I think I get where you're coming from.
Attempted humor.
Yeah, it was. Tomcat. Hey guys, the Death Metal Festival went on in Copenhagen is done. I have some free time. I'm taking a day trip to Malamo's favorite rightist topic. But Sweden has just had their general election where the far-right Sweden Democrats have increased their vote share, although not as much as expected, and are expected to be kingmakers in any coalition talks, I believe. What do you think of the election results? Also, we need an MR and TMBS t-shirts at some point in the middle of doing some TMBS fan design if you're interested. Cheers. Yes, I am. Message me that on Discord, please. I need to mug up on what's happening in Sweden. I'm behind on that. I know it's terrible, but I need to know more. And yes, T-shirts are in the pipeline.
Generally, I'd just say I think that's one way America being more diverse than, say, Scandinavian countries is a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. Okay, let's take one final call. You're calling from a 610 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? 610.
Sammy?
No, not Sammy. Wrong.
Is that me?
Yes, this is you. Yeah, it's you. Hello?
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. So you keep talking about the wave and...
What wave? Blue wave?
Oh, I thought I got cut off. So you keep talking about the blue, yes. And how do we know... I got a concern about the voting machines. So wonderful that we are all on the wave, but how do we overcome the machines?
I'm not convinced that there's going to be mass voter fraud through voting machines, to be honest with you. So, but I guess, look, what we'll know, and this is where exit polls are useful. If there is a mass if there's a discrepancy across the country between exit polls that show Democrats winning by significant margins, and then results come in the opposite way, the first response is nobody should concede anything, and they should immediately start questioning and highlighting the process, because obviously we know that the Republicans are, dangerous and corrupt and unethical. But I wouldn't go in with that assumption. I still think we can win these seats. Thanks for the call, man. It's also another good reason that why everybody should be sort of mobilized in general, not just for voting. Across the board.
My understanding of how that hacking would work is it'd be like shaving a little bit at the margins, close races.
I don't think you can't do can't just full tallies, like this person won by 20, now they're going to lose by 20.
Yeah.
It's in the margins.
That's why AMLO was able to win in Mexico this time around, right? Like his margin was too big to have a fraud.
His margin was too big to have a fraud, yeah. That's exactly what I think. You're calling from an 860 area code with the final call today. Bam! Not you. You're calling from a 202 area code with the final call of the day. Are you ready?
Is this me?
This is you.
Okay. I don't know if this is redundant, but I just wanted to reiterate about the Nike stuff with the Colin Kaepernick, how it's a representation of how neutered our politics are. So on social media and different stuff, I've seen so many people be like, I'm going to go out and buy 6 Nike suits, and their response to the entire issue is away from the policy and how, it's about police brutality and not buying Nike.
I agree with you. I think it's a legitimate critique, and I also think that it's excellent that they're doing this. And on Woke Bros, Waz and I went into the intricacies of holding the dialectic, including also just even Nike as a very abusive and predatory company, and also the fact that consumerism isn't going to solve the problem, and the fact that this is huge, and culture also matters, and this is important culture.
Yeah.
Thanks for the call.
Yeah, it's true. It is pathological to sort of expect, I guess, these companies to. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say. Go
on. A retcon with the limited amount of information we have. Do we have time? Do we have a read? Oh no, okay, yeah, that was the call question. Heretical Christian, you guys know. I know you guys touched on Tucker Carlson yesterday. I feel it's time to quote the great George Carlin: "Fuck Tucker. Tucker sucks."
Yeah, he's a white nationalist.
That is a true quote. Thames Darwin.
He was a comrade, Carlin.
Let's see. Michael, I think the statement "robots are not going to steal your job" sounds exactly like something a robot would say. Bolsonaro is leaking intestine. Hola, gringo. Bolsonaro was stabbed.
Yeah.
His leaking intestine because he was stabbed.
Hola,
gringos. Hola, gringos. Please give a shout out to the PT for Haddadji running in Lula's place. Comrade Ecola and I will do our best to fight the fascist. Free Lula. I like this. Seems like a sort of global dimension to John McCain's brain tumor humor.
I thought it was a punchline, but it was the person's username.
It was the person's username. J. Cole, automation's been around since the beginning of organized society. I think Michael hit it perfect. It's all about how technology is managed and properly governed. Yeah, right. That's what I think. Juicy Bluebirds. I'm keeping with your recent talk of Posadism. I want to recommend The Culture Novels by Ian M. Banks. There's no better examples of fully automated luxury gay communism in print. Ironically, Musk keeps naming his rockets after ships from this explicitly communist series. Well, Elon Musk thinks he's a communist. Yeah, he doesn't read books, right?
Ian Banks is interesting. He writes some mainstream fiction under the name Ian Banks and science fiction under Ian M. Banks.
Ian M. Banks.
Yeah.
Just be a communist, Elon Musk. You'll be so much happier.
Oh, excuse me. Carmel, this is an important point. Cardi B's mother is Trinidadian. How long must we stand for this erasure? Mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa. Well, I'm definitely Cardi. I mean, I already was, but that really reinforces it. Okay. Let's find the final I am the day. Oh, no, it's a bit too long. Gabe from Chicago. Let's see. Rachel Atwood with the final I am of the day. A Moscow oligarch I briefly worked for named his vicious guard dog Pinochet. It's quite creepy. We're back live tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.
That guy to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds